Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizing committee from CRC Hospital Shah Alam for the kind invitation to me to deliver a CME during this Hospital Shah Alam Research Awareness Week. I'm Kuan, one of the medical officers from Digital Health Research and Innovation from the Institute for Clinical Research located in the National Institutes of Health Malaysia in Setia Alam. The topic that I'm going to deliver today is tackling the research iceberg. During this 30 minutes presentation, I will be covering the different types of icebergs models and its applications, research icebergs in the context of the visible outputs as well as the invisible inputs, methods to tackle the research icebergs effectively, as well as to share my personal experience from the journey of conception of the research idea up to the publication. And I will conclude with a short summary slide. Disclaimer that the views presented during this CMA is mainly for general education and information and does not necessarily represent the views of the MOH. So what do you think about an iceberg? I'm going to share a few diagrammatic representations of the icebergs, where some, they may think that icebergs is something very tiny and you are hoping that one day you could be like this gentleman standing on the peak of the iceberg and to conquer it. While some, like the cruise industries, they are actually very fearful of the icebergs, as you have known the previous encounters with unexpected icebergs, where some tourism industries actually have something like known as the tour cruise, where you can get as close as the icebergs as possible for you to experience the challenge that you are unaware what lies beneath it. Some of these icebergs are actually applied in certain models where it could be used in different ways, such as for people to understand the underlying causes of the problem of events. This is applicable in certain organizations, where some industries actually use the icebergs models for you to understand and analyze the whole scenario before you think how to create innovations and solutions out of it. And some people actually use the icebergs models to analyze and to propose certain diagnosis tools to be used in classrooms, such as during some undergrads or postgrads level. As for research purpose, in this research icebergs, our context is we are only able to see the peak of the icebergs and may not fully understand the whole entire nature of the research as it was originally conducted, unless you are part of the team which is conducting the whole research from beginning to the end of the research. So I'm going to introduce a few terms for these research icebergs. Please do not worry because I'm going to share the detailed definition in the subsequent slides. Some of the terms that we are using for research iceberg, and first you can see from this diagrammatic representation, you can actually see the level of the sea, where it's a surface level, shown by the blue arrow, and on top of it, we call it as the visible outputs, where beneath the surface of the sea, these are all the invisible inputs or the hardwares that will make people, by the end of the research, to be able to experience the visible outputs. Some of the components of the visible outputs includes the most common will be the article, or also known as manuscript, preprints, as well as presentations. What about the invisible inputs? We have as early as conception of the research questions and ideas, methods, data, softwares. How about the mistakes and corrections that happen throughout the whole research procedures? Discussions, community consultation, and last but not least, documentation. Let us dive through into each individual component. We will cover the first visible outputs, like I mentioned, preprints, articles, and presentations. What is actually an article? Like I mentioned, the other terminology we commonly found is known as the manuscript, in which the authors who are involved in the study report on the whole research that they have conducted. As for the preprints, this is actually a version of the scientific manuscript posted on public server prior to the formal peer review. Some of the famous preprint public service that is available, example, Medirix, it's for some of the authors who have written maybe the first version of the draft of the manuscript. They just share it in the particular platform for the other authors to provide their unofficial peer review. Mainly is to give comments and ideas how to improve the study before they reach the final version of the article, where some actually put it in the public server area for potential journals to identify their particular article and to suggest to them which particular journal it could be interested with their particular topic. Okay. As for presentations, it's like oral or poster presentations for you to share your research findings with the main stakeholders as well as your peers. And like today, we are having the CME is another type of oral presentation, as well as webinars. It could be done either through online or various platforms as well. What about the invisible inputs? So we start with research questions, where it's mainly the researchers propose some of the questions or research study aims for them to answer subsequently in the whole research, where ideas mainly tie to the research questions, where they bring out certain new hypotheses or refer to certain research questions in order for them to propose a solution to address the problem. Let me give you an example. If some of the researchers, they are interested to do a topic on diabetes mellitus, so they will find some research questions which is commonly happening in the management of the diabetes mellitus, and then ideas will come out from there where it's tied to the questions for them to solve certain management of the diabetes mellitus in terms of compliance issues as well as drug dispensing and etc. Whereas methods, there are a few terminologies related to methods. Some researchers, they are more comfortable to use methodology, materials, and methods. So it could mean quite similar to each other. And it depends on which journal you are aiming target to submit. Some journals, they have a different preference to use certain terms. It mainly refers to the processes or techniques to collect data as well as to use the data later on for data analysis. To me, this is the most crucial part of the research because you need to plan your research very well in order to come up with a protocol with a detailed methodology rather than you just write something which is not done systematically and you try to readjust it throughout your whole research, which is not advisable. We are supposed to outline the whole plan of the research conduct to provide the best ideal methods, such as you are planning for a cross-sectional study, randomized control trial, and etc. What about data? Data is one of the crucial components when you are doing a research. It's mainly referring to the information collected or you observe, such as from observational studies. You generate out of the secondary sources available, or you create in order for you to validate your original research ideas to answer and to propose some findings. Commonly, we divide data into two types, the structured and unstructured data. Structured data meaning that you can be able to make it into a very systematic format like a table of presentations such as demographics of the patient, the age, the gender, the ethnicities, and level of educations, as well as certain signs and symptoms that you are trying to collect for certain diseases and etc. Whereas unstructured data, it may be referring to some of the images that you are collecting, like the X-rays, CT scans, or certain qualitative recordings that you are doing for qualitative data. All these are known as unstructured data. But bear in mind that unstructured data could be reorganized for you to produce a structured data by the end of the research. So what about the software? The software is mainly referring to the computer-based applications used to convert inputs, which you have collected all the data for you to generate the desired outputs. None of this, we are experts in everything. So what I suggest to you is for you to collaborate with some of the stakeholders. Like you need to analyze your data, you should have engaged statisticians for you from the beginning of the study to make sure your whole research is well planned. and they can actually propose certain useful software such as SPSS and as well as certain sample size calculators for you to be used in your whole research. So softwares may be referred to well-identified set of codes, including algorithms as well as scripts, computational workflows for certain machine learnings as well as for certain studies related to artificial intelligence. Humans usually couldn't run away from mistakes and corrections, like you and me. So mistakes are referring to the problems, deviations, faults, as well as anything beyond it. So when we encounter mistakes, we learn through experience. What we need to do is to perform or do something to make it right, meaning we have to correct it and learn through it and not to repeat throughout the whole conduct of your research or in future research. What about discussion? Discussion is mainly for the researchers to explore, describe, analyze, as well as interpret the findings or results of the study. We have community consultation, which is commonly used in public health research, is mainly to recognize as well as to accommodate relevant particularities of a given community for a specific research project. I have a slide after this for you to know what are the areas of the community consultations. Last but not least, documentation. So documentation starts from the moment you concept an idea, you need to document your research, and you continue throughout the whole process of your research until you reach the output where you are planning to present or publish your research findings. So the whole process involves a continuous drafting, revising, as well as editing. I would like to share an experience that documentation is something very important, because if you can document properly during your protocol level, it could be used later on during your publication, because most of the components starting from introduction, literature, as well as methods, it could be used and refined later on for you to add on the results and discussion for your whole study to complete a manuscript. So I'm going to propose a few methods to tackle the whole research iceberg effectively. So first and foremost, you need to tackle the invisible inputs. If you still remember, there's a lot of invisible inputs. I'm going to categorize research ideas, methods, as well as research questions together to tackle effectively, where the strategies here is mainly for you to map the gap. Like the earlier example I used, the diabetes mellitus is a very common non-communicable disease, but there's a lot of aspects that you could actually identify what's the gap in the clinical practice, the translation or implementation of this particular topic. If you can identify there's a huge gap, even it's a common topic like diabetes mellitus, you can actually propose certain research questions and objectives to answer your research. Some would like to explore into new innovation and new research to answer certain research questions which is not published or available elsewhere. As long as you are able to justify, please go ahead. And what we usually propose here is to map the gap. How you can actually map the gap is you have to do a quick literature search where you can actually identify what's the gap that is present in the particular context. And if you can look at the whole gap in a different perspective, you could actually come out with certain ideas and questions. For the literature search per se, if you're going to conduct a study in local, like in Malaysia, the literature search that you have must be able to answer your study population as well as the ideas that you have. But bear in mind that if you're unable to get certain literature to support your local context, you are allowed to find representation of the population, which is quite similar to, let's say, Malaysia. You can actually find data from Singapore, Thailand, or even Asia level like Japan and Korea to map your current population that you study. But I couldn't deny that Malaysia's data, it may be a bit difficult to tackle because of our diverse ethnicities. But it's all right for you to quote some of the references, like Southeast Asia or Asian studies, if you are unable to get as close as possible to the local context. But if you are aiming to compare with a gold standard certain parameters that you use, like the WHO classifications, you are advised to produce literature which is international level and quote from relevant sources like CDC as well as WHO and etc. And for all research, methods need to be documented very well because researchers are expected to produce research which is reproducible, meaning that someone could actually cite your study or duplicate your study to answer a certain research objective by using the methodologies that you are proposed. This is very important because we come across some of the researchers who actually trying to forge certain data, come up with the whole paper and publish it. But when other researchers try to look into the study, they are unable to reproduce the exactly similar methods. This is due to research misconduct of the particular researchers who aim for publication rather than conducting the whole research properly. It's just mainly to forge certain data which is generated out of nowhere. So for research, we usually don't do in silo, but I understand that certain study design like case reports, case study, some researchers prefer to do it personally or may include one or two friends just to help out in the research case reports and etc. However, bear in mind that most research, you involve multidisciplinary and you have a lot of team members because each of us, we are expert in our own context. We are encouraged you to have cross all the disciplinaries for you to import the experts for them to provide their inputs on how to produce the best research conduct and research methods. Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, you can actually consult the experts. Like if you are not very well versed in analysis, you should actually engage with some statisticians from the beginning of the research for them to provide the input on how to make your whole research sample size calculation as well as for the analysis is well planned from beginning. Instead of you finish the data, only you consult them, only we found out that you have wrongly calculated the sample size, or worst case, the data wasn't cleaned well and you are unable to use most of the instruments and the variables to produce your analysis. Sorry. So certain things like the methods, it includes some sample size calculation, like I mentioned earlier. Researchers' common problem is they calculate the sample size without factoring in the attrition rate or the dropout rate. We usually encourage researchers to factor in like 10 to 15% from the original calculated sample size, because some of the data you collect from the researchers, from the target audience may be incomplete. There may be some dropout rates, like more than 10% of the total questions that you have submitted, you have produced for the people to participate, for your samples to participate, only you found out that when you collect back the questions, there's more than 10% of the questions unanswered. So this type of situation mainly doesn't allow you to use it for analysis, but you could actually just use the demographic to see how many people participated, but not to use it for you to further calculate the associations, the whole variables if each particular questionnaire has more than 10% of incompleteness. How about the data? Mainly, we ask you to understand and plan accordingly prior to the data collection. Like I mentioned, includes 10 to 20% attrition rate or the dropout rate. And you need to have a very good data management team. So it starts as from a normal project manager, then you have a data scientist, architect, as well as engineers. This is more relevant to studies which is related to big data. And bear in mind that one of the most important components prior to the analysis is data cleaning. You can collect thousands and thousands of data, but if you fail to clean the data properly to exclude all those outliers or incomplete data, you are basically generating the research outputs without proper way of churning out the whole data. Meaning the common term we have is if you feed the softwares with rubbish, then another rubbish will come out. So rubbish in, rubbish out. What about the softwares? So we always encourage researchers to choose the correct softwares. Like I say, you have SPSS, Strata, R, etc., and you have sample size calculator. And if you don't know about this, please always consult the experts. And we are not encouraging researchers to use the pirated version of the software. If possible, try to contact your nearby libraries to get access to use certain softwares to avoid any potential licensing issues, because it's going to affect your publication as well as your data analysis later on. Mistakes and corrections. A famous quote is, when you fix a mistake, you make a correction, a change that rights a wrong. This I'm going to let you bring home and ponder about this particular statement. What about discussion and community consultation? Your strategies are mainly for you to understand your whole research. You don't do in silo, you have a team. So you have a frequent engagement with your collaborators, your stakeholders to understand your research more and to ensure the results and discussion are able to answer your research objectives. So when you start with a research topic, then you plan your whole research, questions as well as your research objectives. And when you analyze the data, you are going to produce results and your discussion. These two crucial components must be tally with the original research topics, questions, as well as objectives. You are not supposed to propose A and B at the research objective while your results is going to answer Y and Z. It doesn't make sense. The other advice for strategies is mainly to learn from the experts. Each of us, we are comfortable with certain things. If we are not well versed as well as don't have the scientific writing skills, please always consult someone who have the language as well as the scientific methods to write a proper article. Like me, previously, I learned from my previous director that there's a lot of things for you to pick up on how to write a scientific article rather than you write a news article for the news reader for them to understand. Scientific article is very different because you have to follow a very detailed outline or template methodology for them to answer your whole research context. Community consultation, basically, you have to have a good framework to discuss what are the ethical goals to be very effective, like shown in this. The common ethical goals of community consultations includes enhanced protection, enhanced benefits, legitimacy, as well as shared responsibility. Last but not least, documentation. The strategies are mainly practice makes perfect. Like I said, the whole process is a cyclical. You start from drafting, revise, edit, revise, edit, and the whole thing just continue until you reach the final output that you desire. You need to understand the whole research procedures as well as approval process. Like you are conducting a research, if you are a Ministry of Health staff using the facilities, the patients from the Ministry of Health facilities, or you are applying for Ministry of Health research grant, you need to register with National Medical Research Register NMR, get ethical clearance, as well as to get the panel reviewers from the grant, as well as certain relevant review panels to get the whole research approval process before you start a particular study. Try to standardize the scientific terms. If you are trying to write a paper which is related, like say nursing, the scientific terms you have must be relevant to the whole context instead of you are just creating some terms out of nowhere and trying to expect the readers or the reviewers to understand. This is not advisable. And bear in mind that documentation is very important. If you are planning to publish in an American journal, your whole write-up must be in American language rather than in the British, UK style, okay? And if you are trying to introduce certain terms like cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, the first term need to be spelled in the introduction, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, bracket CPR. Subsequently, you are allowed to use the abbreviation or the acronym CPR throughout the whole context. If you don't introduce the term from beginning, some of the targeted audience or the reviewers may not be understand which particular term you are referring to, okay? And for certain intervention studies, you have to pass the particular exam known as good clinical practice in order for you to do human trials with intervention purposes. What about tackling effectively for the visible outputs? Like I mentioned, there are total 3 of them. I'm going to cover only the presentation and publication. Let's look at this particular gentleman again. You want to reach the output, okay? So you want it to be on top of the iceberg. How do you do it effectively? I'm going to give you a few tips for oral presentation, which I'm going to divide into pre, during, as well as post-oral presentation. So for pre-oral presentation, you need to understand what's the conference format like. Like this particular CME, I actually presented physically in Hospital Shah Alam last week, but I'm going to do a recording as a virtual one. So you need to make sure that you know, is it a physical or virtual presentation, because it means a lot on how you're going to convey the whole message. Like for virtual one, you're expected to turn on the video like I'm doing now, while for physical, you are expected to dress up decently to be on the stage at the podium for you to convey your whole research. You need to obtain the information of the whole conference or the presentation format. How much time is it allocated? Does this include Q&A session? For example, they will say 8+2. 8+2 meaning 8 minutes of presentation for you to cover the topic as early as introduction up to the level of conclusion to convince the judges or the stakeholders why your research outputs deserve to be awarded certain prizes for your competition. Okay. And 2 minutes equals to 2 minutes of Q&A for you to answer whatever questions that the judges or the audience has posed up for you to justify why you are using these methods and etc. Bear in mind that the deadline for slide submission is very crucial, because some organizers, they actually require you to produce the slides for them to be able to display it when you are on the stage. Make sure the format that you are submitting is actually able to be read from the other end. If they ask for PowerPoint format, please submit PowerPoint. But my preference is usually I'll give a PowerPoint and PDF, and to ask the organizer to open the PowerPoint and PDF at the same time to ensure the PowerPoint runs the similar format as how a PDF appearance should be in. Bear in mind that some of the PowerPoint may not be compatible with certain versions of the Microsoft that the organizer is actually using. For pre-oral presentation, you are encouraged to have a trial run as well as to go for multiple feedback among your peers for improvement before you be prepared on the podium. One of my previous superior has mentioned before, if you get to be invited to an international conference, the earliest that you need to prepare is actually minimum of 6 months for you to prepare yourself, to be very well-versed, to understand the whole environment and to able to convey your research findings appropriately to in front of the large audience in the international level. And if you are conducting research in the KKM facilities, you must get DG approval prior to all this. If you are not familiar with this, please consult your nearest CRC on the process. What about during? What you have to do is, if you are going for oral presentation or competition, please arrive as early as 30 minutes prior to your session for you to familiarize. Is it a small enclosed room with 30 audience, or is it a big auditorium with a podium, auditorium that can fit as many as 300? Do they provide wireless microphone or microphone with a cord, or do they give you a laser pointer for you to control your slides and to other supports from the IT side and etc. If you have already emailed the organizers your presentation slides, always bring your extra pen drive with your backup slides and video, just in case your slides doesn't turn well on the other day. At least you have a backup. And always be confident and be yourself. And we would actually encourage you to have a very good pace to cover your whole research topics, especially for competition. You're not encouraged to talk in a very high speed manner without properly articulating what you want the audience to answer. Always have a very nice pace, a pause, before you continue the next particular topic. And we have come across certain presentation that the audience and the presenters have presented too much. It's a 10 minutes presentation, and the researcher actually produced over 30 slides. So what him or her actually did was to skip through all the slides because of the time limit, and to make things worse, by the times which is already out for oral competition, the timekeeper actually pressed the bell, but the presenter still continued to talk. So what they actually did was they just off his microphone straight, and the presenter had no choice but to step down from the podium. So it actually lose a lot of advantage to convey your research properly, as well as, of course, the presenter didn't make it to the top finalists for the competition. So certain research are conducted in a very big team. So you have a lot of stakeholders, and you may not be able to answer each and all questions that is posed by the judges. What you need to do is to be very honest in answering questions. If you are unsure what answers you actually should provide, please be honest. Just say, I'm sorry, I have no particular answers for this question. Can I discuss back with my team and get back to you after this presentation, or something like that? Or it's relevant to certain stakeholders that you would like to get more message before you answer in the public. Go ahead. Instead of you trying to create a context out of nowhere just to convince the judges without a clear reference. What about post? So after presentation, you learn from experience. No one is perfect on the first encounter. You need to learn, like I say, mistakes and correction, and you need to be able to improve the future presentations. If certain organizers allow you to collect feedback from your presentation, please go ahead. And these are very important. They may say that, oh, you are unable to cover your methods properly, you are not confident, your gesture is not right. So get all this feedback if the organizer is allowed to share, and try to improve yourself to the next presentation. Last but not least, practice makes perfect. Okay, nobody is successful during the first attempt. Usually people take a lot of attempts and learn a lot of mistakes in order to climb to the peak of the iceberg. What about for poster presentation? Actually, the list is very, very long. I only picked the main 4. You have to ensure your poster prepared in the correct format and orientation. Our common encounter, in the research conference is the format require you to produce a poster in the AO format, in a vertical portrait format, but the presenter actually printed out in a landscape format. This is not advisable because the poster board is actually designed, physical poster presentation, for you to paste your poster in a AO portrait format. So when the presenter actually printed landscape format, he or her actually have to fold the side of the poster. And when people want to view the poster, they have to open up like a booklet and they close back. But when you open up, you actually obscure the visibility of your neighboring poster. Okay. How about for online poster and soft copies, the e-posters? Usually the organizers will tell you have to save in a PDF format with a particular size of the poster. Please follow it. And when you have your poster presentations, sometimes the organizing committee allows like 3 to 5 minutes for you to be around next to your posters during the tea break, for the judges to come, for you to be able to produce a quick summary, like 3 minutes, to synthesize the whole research context for the judges to understand, instead of them reading everything. Okay. And like I say, during this tea break, the researchers are encouraged to be standing next to your poster to answer any potential questions, as well as for invitation of the future collaboration by leaving your contact details like email, or for them to post some questions for you to answer offline. So for research icebergs, I usually look at it's like an inverted pyramid. What about a study design? If you are familiar with this, on the right-hand side, study design, I will say it's like a upright pyramid. So what we are actually aiming is to reach the peak of the study design, which is a systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Some of us, we are very comfortable and commonly start with case series, observational studies, as well as to write a one-page editorial comment, which is at the base of the pyramid, before we try to do more advanced study designs like cohort, case control, as well as randomized control trial. I'm going to share one of my personal experience from the journey of conception to publication. I'm actually trying to hit the tip of the iceberg, which is the systematic review and meta-analysis. This is actually involves a lot of collaborators, like you can see from the logos presented below. It's actually a systematic review and meta-analysis about a topic related to digital health as well as cardiovascular disease. We are very happy that through the hard work, this final paper was actually accepted and published in the Lancet Digital Health back in 2022. So the ideal growth timeline, as you can see, when we are trying to plant the seeds, we are expected to have a very, very smooth linear line to reach the output, which is the fruit. Like I have shown here, we concepted the idea in September 2020, and we harvested the fruit in June 2022. So it took almost 2 years. But the reality is not. It's not a linear line. We are actually having a very bizarre whole growth timeline where you can see we experience a lot of drought, lightning, thunderstorms, and etc. before finally accepted in the Lancet Digital Health. Let me explain in detail using the context of research icebergs. If you can see the invisible inputs, we have challenges as early as concepting the research idea, where because this is a systematic review and meta-analysis, we need to map the gap. We need to know what is the question or topic that you need to address in digital health and cardiovascular. So I'm interested to look into clinical trials. It's part of my master's thesis at the time. So I mapped the gap and I found out that there's actually a huge gap in the providing more updated information or reviews on these particular areas of interest. So once you have the research idea and you can map the gap, you need to search in University of York database known as Prospero for all the systematic review and meta-analysis. Try to see whether has someone conducted these particular topics recently or is quite similar to what you propose. So usually for digital health projects, we are not really encouraged to produce a similar research within the recent years, like 2 years context or maybe 5 years context. However, because the technology is evolving very fast, if there is a new technology coming in, you are allowed to register this topic and do it ASAP. Okay, so we have a group of teamwork comprising of researchers, clinicians, cardiologists, as well as someone who is trained in systematic review. So we have a commitment from all the team members. Bear in mind that none of us, we are full-time, we have our own full-time job like clinicians, researchers, and etc. So we have everyone with a lot of workload, existing workload. We need to balance the teamwork very well, delegate the job accordingly. And the most important thing is to have a very good timeline, or we have a very well-planned ideal Gantt chart for every team members to participate. So we tackle this by having a very frequent member discussion ethics. Some of our researchers, our investigators are actually from the UK. So we have the updates and discussion to fit the timing that suits both continents, the UK and the Malaysia level. What about the visible outputs? So once we have churned out the whole research inputs, trying to make it as properly conducted as possible, we have a lot of challenges in the terms of which timeline that we actually should adhere. Because at the time it was how should I say, it coincide with the COVID pandemic. So a lot of us, we have different priorities that we need to focus on the clinical work, etc. It's a bit difficult, a bit challenging. There's a lot of revision done to the planned timeline, but the idea is once you have started a systematic review, by the point of completion, you are advised to publish within the next 1 year. Otherwise, your data may be outdated. You need to generate new data or new reviews to produce a new outputs. That's how challenging systematic review and meta-analysis is. We have to identify the journal. In this particular context, I have a frequent discussions with my supervisor and co-supervisor. We identify the Lancet Digital Health. Back at that time, the Digital Health Lancet Digital Health wasn't a very, very new journal and there wasn't a visible impact factor. I'll discuss this later on in my slide. But we consult the experts and we are thinking that this journal has the potential to reach out to the targeted community that we wanted to learn more about these study findings, which is clinicians involved in cardiovascular management, treatment, and also those who are trained in digital health or telemedicine per se. So our main issue is actually to find funding source for the journal. Most of the journals, they produce the gold access or open access, where the researchers need to sort out their funding, explore the funding opportunities. Like this particular paper we have published, we managed to secure funding from the British Heart Foundation to fund our paper due to the research outputs that we have. And of course, when you are trying to aim the article or manuscript for publication, when you have submitted to the journal, you have a lot of comments from the reviewers and editors, and we need to reply diplomatically to the journal for any queries that they pose. So this is how our manuscript process was all conducted. We submitted as early as 29th of January 2022, after the Christmas and New Year, because most of our collaborators are on long leave at the time. So we submitted after we getting all the author's consent and declaration of conflict of interest. And during this 6-month period, there's a lot of communications with the editorial board as well as the reviewers. And we made, I think, up most to the 10 rounds of revisions before finally accepted for publication. And it was actually published online in the Lancet Digital Health Journal in September. And I want to show you at the bottom right corner here, where initially when we submitted the paper, there wasn't any people citing our paper. And within a year, we had 17. And by now, we are actually close to 75 of people who cited the paper. So what is Lancet Digital? Just for you, if you're interested, it was founded in December 2018. When they identified the journal, at that time, there wasn't a journal impact factor. But to date, in 2024, the journal has reached impact factor of 23.8. I'm not going to discuss in detail. If you're interested, you can read the slides later on how it was actually calculated. So what is the success factor behind this? If you are doing a research like what we have, a lot of investigators as well as collaborators, would you want to have a leader like we have this in the middle, for the leader who guide us and pull the whole team to reach the desired output, which is we are aiming to publish in a high impact journal? Or you prefer to be pulling the cart, the wagon, and you wanted a boss who just direct us instead of joining us together? What about an introvert? Some, they actually prefer to do everything by themselves. You can do that, like I say, is for case reports. But for this, because it involves systematic reviews and meta-analysis, you need a lot of experts from every field. And each particular abstract and full paper that you are going to systematically review it to churn out the qualitative as well as quantitative measurements, you are not supposed to do alone. Each particular paper need to be reviewed and systematically through at least 2 different reviewers for this systematic review. And if there's a disagreement, a third one should come in. So our particular collaboration, we actually opt for option number 2. So we actually try to make everyone to be participating equally in order to reach our desired target. So in summary of this presentation of 30 minutes plus, in Research Iceberg, we are still able to see the tip of the iceberg and may not fully understand the entire nature of the research as how it was originally conducted. You should actually tackle all the invisible inputs that you can see below the iceberg, starting from research ideas, objectives, methods, data, consultations, then discussion, reports writing, documentation, and etc. for you to be able to reach the top of the desired outputs that you are going to aim for, preprint, publication, or a presentation. What I actually advise to all who are interested in research, start planting your research seed, because you will never know when you can actually harvest the fruitful outcomes. It could take as short as half a year, or it may take as long as a 2 years journey, like what I personally experienced. Please bear in mind that if you plant your seed properly and you go through the whole process from seedling, young tree, grown tree, you will eventually be able to harvest the fruit. So I would like to thank you for your kind attention during this 30 minutes plus presentation. And I actually prepare a QR code here for you to scan our published paper in the Lancet Digital Health if you are interested to know more about how the study was published in the Lancet Digital Health. And you have any further questions, please do email me. My email is stated in the slide as below. And thank you very much for your kind concentration. Thank you.